By the time Tatsumaki fights Saitama again, she is going to be a very different character. And if things keep going the way that they have, she'll end up pushing him way further than Cosmic Garo ever did. I mean, based on her backstory, it's really just a matter of time. You see, 18 years ago, when Tatsumaki was only 10 years old, yeah, she's 28, her parents sold her to Tsukuyomi. Now, Tsukuyomi is an evil psychic research organization. The settlement where they used to experiment on Tatsumaki was just a massive cube in a mountainous forest. This is pretty huge because even with all the redraws, we know that another S-Class hero has almost exactly the same origin story. 20 years ago, when Flashy Flash was just 5 years old, his parents sold him to a place called the Ninja Village. It was a cube-shaped production site in a mountainous forest that turned children under 17 into ninjas. Both of these locations were also involved in the creation of monsters. The Ninja Village had Flashy Flash and Speedo Sound Sonic survive for 30 days in a forest full of genetically modified beasts, while Tatsumaki was almost eaten by one of Tsukuyomi's rampaging monster samples. Tatsumaki and Flashy Flash were emotionally devastated and stunted by their negative experiences. For Tatsumaki, her care for her sister Fubuki is something that helped her recover, and even excel. It's the same with Flashy Flash and the friendship he forged with Speedo Sound Sonic. All these similarities aren't just a big coincidence. Their histories are this alike because they're connected to the same monster, God. That's the name of the monster responsible for many of the world's greatest threats. And you can check out this video to see just how dangerous he really is after you're done with this one. Anyways, the true purpose of the Ninja Village was to create suitable pawns for God. God's most consistent means of controlling a person is through contact with one of his cubes. If he deems a creature worthy, he'll grant them incredible power. The Ninja Village had a cube of its own, and made use of it during ninja graduation ceremonies. And when Blast broke into Tsukuyomi's lab, he recovered the cube that they had. Now, God's connection to the Ninja Village is fairly straightforward. Years ago, Blast had a ninja partner named Empty Void who hunted cubes with him. God turned Empty Void into one of his pawns, and the ninja pretty much recreated the same sort of environment he grew up in for the sake of his new master. But what's up with the Esper connection? Well, like Murata with the cover pages, God seems to be obsessed with Espers. At this point, every natural human Esper worth caring about has caught at least a glimpse of the entity. 6 years ago, God manipulated Psychos, another natural Esper, and drove her insane. She suddenly became hellbent on the extermination of mankind. Her rhetoric was actually very similar to Homeless Emperor's, and he was also one of God's pawns and was made to work with Psychos for the Monster Association. For some reason or another, God is very selective when it comes to his pawns. Psychos, for instance, has the extremely rare Third Eye ability, which lets her see into the future. In most cases, God is completely invisible to anyone he doesn't want to be seen by. Homeless Emperor was deemed worthy of power based on his negative mindset towards humanity. This turned a basic human into a disaster-level dragon powerhouse. But aside from his insanely powerful energy manipulation, he was still a regular human. So for as incredible as God's power is, it can only do so much. It's like turning a cheap van into a sports car, but keeping the old engine. Espers are different. One thing we talked about with our One Punch Man Secret Power System video was the fact that this world hardly has any superpowers. At least not by their standards. Unlike Tatsumaki, when they were kids, guys like Garo and Saitama were weak and bullied. They owed this shift in their lives to physical and mental training. And the Tank Topper army wouldn't be so tough if they dressed differently. Espers are the only natural superhumans in the series. Psychos considered her and her fellow Espers to be better than regular humans, and God supported that belief. By default, a pawn with Esper abilities is simply better stock than one without. Unfortunately for him, Espers are quite the rarity. They also vary greatly when it comes to the strength of their powers, which is why Tsukuyomi has invested so heavily into the production of artificial Espers. They turned a normal human like Apollo into an Esper with enough strength to push an A-class level hero like Fubuki. Even Tatsumaki had to acknowledge the strides that Tsukuyomi had made in their development. But there are clear differences between them. Notably, without even moving, Tatsumaki's telekinetic output easily outpaced Apollo's. Body language is a good indicator of how much energy an Esper might be using. Fubuki tends to raise both hands. Someone like Tatsumaki usually only needs a finger to get the job done. Meanwhile, Apollo used a hand and extended fingers as his focus, while also reinforcing it with his other arm. For artificial espers, there is a greater emphasis on stability. And based on Apollo's words, it seems like Tsukuyomi intends to make its artificial espers as balanced as possible, and downright harmonic in the use of their abilities. Apollo also had enough poison resistance to survive the injection of a lethal dosage directly into his body. That's a bit of a strange trait for an Esper to possess. Even Tatsumaki was surprised, but it totally makes sense. The alumni of the Ninja Village also had impressive poison resistance. Sonic's 2 big trips to the bathroom are proof of that enough. Dealing with poison is pretty on brand for a shinobi. But there's more to it. When God gave Garo cosmic power, the hero hunter killed most of the cast without even realizing. They actually all died from the insane radiation he was unknowingly creating. And funny enough, we see that Flashy Flash held out against that radiation better than most. Oh, and the button-up that Apollo wears is made to look like the cosmos, which is very in line with God's brand. At the facility, Tatsumaki became Subject 101. Like Flashy Flash, who was believed to be a failure, the director of the settlement believed that Tatsumaki had no potential. But how could that ever be the case when she is by far the strongest Esper? She was already confirmed to be one when she was sold, and right after getting away, she slaughtered a whole group of artificial Esper adults by her lonesome. Blast even labeled her as someone with too much power, and believed that she could have saved herself from the rampaging monster if she tried. Tatsumaki acted like her powers weren't working because she hoped that they would let her go. I bring this up because it just goes to show how absurd Tatsumaki's control over her own power output has always been. Despite having the greatest psychic output in the entire series, she can suppress her powers to the point where she is indistinguishable from a normal person. Now, psychic powers like telepathy or telekinesis tend to move in a straight line that always finds the shortest route. Fubuki trained herself to freely control the travel of her psychic waves. So, with her psychic whirlwind technique, she can nullify and divert psychic waves that come from other espers. It's an offensive skill that she is really proud of, but it's something that Tatsumaki gained in childhood without even trying. She's even upgraded it to be used as a powerful attack. And on more than one occasion, Tatsumaki has been able to track and replicate the wavelength of another esper's telekinetic signals, effectively turning their own power against them. It's almost reminiscent of God's forfeiture, which is when the power he's given to someone is used to end their life. With all that said, God already tried to recruit Tatsumaki. In fact, she was chosen before Garo, but it didn't work because Blast expected it almost 2 decades in advance. He told Tatsumaki that when the time comes, she shouldn't expect someone to come save her. So when God pretended to be Blast, his coercion failed. Tsukuyomi knows that they made a huge mistake when it comes to losing Tatsumaki, so they've been trying to correct it ever since. But between her being way too powerful and being backed by the Hero Association, that is far from an easy task. However, they are also keenly aware of her greatest weakness, Fubuki. Tsukuyomi had an undercover agent join the Blizzard group. They managed to slip sleeping pills and poison into her daily supplements. Although Tatsumaki was able to save her sister, the experience wasn't exactly painless, and under different circumstances, like they probably intended, could have been far worse. Tatsumaki's love for her sister, albeit heavy-handed, is truly unconditional. She's willing to put herself through just about anything if it means protecting her precious little sister. Between Apollo swearing vengeance against Tatsumaki specifically, and the fact that she and her sister have psychos, Tsukuyomi is bound to take things even further the next time they meet. Not to mention the fact that the hero Gearspur also seems to be an artificial esper and is spying on the Hero Association for Tsukuyomi. Using Fubuki as leverage is the best way to hurt or control Tatsumaki, even if only temporarily. And that is a downright terrifying possibility. Blast only shows up when major events related to God are happening. That's the recovery of a cube, return of Empty Void, to deal with an especially bad pawn of God, or trigger a redraw. Although Homeless Emperor received power from God, it seems like he was too minor to be on Blast's radar. Effectively, He's a hero who mostly sticks to disaster level god threats and their prevention, which is why Sitch promised that if humanity were ever truly threatened, Blast would be sure to return. Disaster level god is described as being a threat to humanity. Cosmic Fear Mode Garo was never officially classified, but that's exactly what he was. Disaster levels are gauged in comparison to the Hero Association's retaliatory strength. Like we said earlier, Garo killed several heroes, S-class and below, with just his aura. Blast, despite being the #1 hero, couldn't handle him. And of course, Saitama's existence isn't factored into any of this. So, in Tatsumaki's case, at least on paper, Blast is the only person they could expect to stop her. Hell, even if all the S-class heroes teamed up against her, they wouldn't be able to do much. Against the Dark Matter Thieves, Metal Bat, Bang, Puri Puri Prisoner, and Atomic Samurai all admitted that simply hitting things really hard is the best they've got. Aside from being able to hurl them all away with minimum effort, defense is one of Tatsumaki's highest stats. She took a direct hit from a god-empowered Psycho's Orochi beam attack, one that literally cut off a piece of the planet itself. And the most it did was give her a few scrapes and rip her dress a bit. So I'm sure you can see why Blast was so desperate to avoid Tatsumaki becoming one of God's pawns. He came back to Earth in a panic when he realized God was trying to convert her. And if it were a matter of joining God to save her sister's life, I have no doubt that Tatsumaki would become Earth's greatest threat without hesitation. Even when she's being a hero, Tatsumaki is no better than a monster when it comes to property damage. Just ask Saitama. She tore through a city just to prove a point to him. And when they made her look cute with AI for a commercial, she started destroying her own home. Tatsumaki is the Hero Association's greatest weapon. When it comes to a frontal assault, the likelihood of her losing is believed to be 0%. But with her behavior, she teeters on the brink of being considered a disaster herself. Saitama is the only one who could ever deal with someone so much stronger than Cosmic Garo. Tatsumaki's first fight against Saitama came to a close earlier than expected because she didn't properly manage her output levels. She was so excited to actually have a strong opponent and focused on having fun that she ended up overextending. It also happened less than a week after the Monster Association raid, and Tatsumaki really pushed herself with that one. It's a bigger deal in the webcomic because it's her wounds reopening that really made her stop fighting Saitama. Now, when Tatsumaki tried to lift Saitama with her power, he was surprisingly heavy. This was despite Tatsumaki using enough force to throw him into space. And when it comes to that sort of estimate, I think we can trust her. According to Fubuki in the webcomic, the strength of a person's will is directly connected to psychic resistance. But since Tatsumaki is usually outmatched, she has no idea about this factor. And we know that Saitama's strong will was a big part of how he broke his limiter. So I guess being able to lift him at all is still pretty impressive. Webcomic Tatsumaki explained that even normal people have chi or aura flowing throughout their bodies. Her attempt to control that energy inside of Saitama just made all of his muscles twitch. With that, it's interesting that despite being able to detect Psychos while she was almost 5,000 feet underground, Tatsumaki doesn't sense the immeasurable energy that Lord Boros described when he saw Saitama. So maybe her heightened detection is limited to fellow espers. In the manga, Tatsumaki promised to surprise Saitama with another test at some point, something that he didn't really care for. But in the webcomic, they both agreed to fight again sometime, so it's pretty much bound to happen. And with the way things keep getting crazier and crazier, we can definitely expect God and Tsukuyomi to play a major part. Regardless, while Saitama can obviously survive a rematch against this sort of Tatsumaki, it's hard to say the same thing about the rest of the world. In the comments, let us know what you're hoping to see from their rematch. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.